let's talk about contender rankings now.
Let's do it.
So my vision here is to sort of tier this out a little bit.
Okay.
In terms of teams that we think are like real contenders, the way you would rank things, the way that you would place these teams in terms of potential to win a title this year, basically. I think that there is a top tier, right?
Yes.
And I think we agree that there are 3 teams in that top tier.
Ooh,
right?
We're gonna have fun.
Okay. Now I'm fascinated.
I think we will have this. Here's what I think we'll agree on. I think we'll have the same top 3 teams. No, we may not. Let's go ahead. I don't want to ruin it because I don't know.
Okay. So
we'll have the same top 2.
For me right now, if I had to pick one team, I would pick Oklahoma City.
Sure.
I trust their defense an incredible amount. I love the way that they're able to play offensively. I think that Chet is going to be an incredibly impactful addition. Now, this is, they didn't make any moves at the deadline because their deadline move is Chet Holmgren, right? Which is the second best player that anybody was going to get at the deadline behind Luka, apparently, right? And I guess AD. But, you're downgrading from Luka to AD. So, to me, Chet is such a big addition to them. He allows them to go big. He allows them to go small. He allows them to play different defensive coverages. He allows them to play big with him and Hartenstein if they have to against certain lineups, like against Minnesota that you mentioned, or allows them to go small like they can potentially with him at the 5, and then you put 4 perimeter players around it and you still have the requisite size to be able to be effective there. It's just such an enormous addition to everything that they do. They've been freaking fantastic without him this season. I mean, you look at their record. I mean, it's just completely obscene. They're sitting here at 42-9 right now. Best defense in the league, top 6 offense in the league. They're going to get Chet back here like full time. I mean, right now, if you made me pick one team, I would pick them.
So I want to reiterate something for everybody. We are talking contenders, like who we think will win the title, not who the best team in the league is. Like, because sometimes we do rankings of who are what's the power rankings of the teams right now, right?
Yep.
And so I want to be clear that we're not having that conversation. I actually went back and forth a little bit in my mind. If I had to, how I try to think of this is if I had to put a substantial amount of money to me in a bet, who would I put the money on, right? And you know that I don't bet and I hate it. So the idea of actually having to put money that matters to me on somebody is significant. And I'll be honest, I went back and forth between them and I assume the second team we talk about. I did end up with them number 1. And it's because of a lot of the things you just talked about and what I believe helped you win in the playoffs. Could they have the best player in every series they play? Yes, right? SGA could be the best player in every series throughout a playoffs. I'm not saying he automatically will be, but they have a legit MVP, top 4, top 5, top 3, whatever player in the league. They have they have the best defense in the league that they just added to with Chet Holmgren. They have all of these answers in the way they play defense. I think that is what is exciting to me, Sam, is you have the 2 big, you have the 1 big, you have different versions of bigs within that. And then you have all of these perimeter defenders okay, you want to go guard Boston? We would, if you're thinking of Oklahoma City, they would have to feel like they have the matchups for Tatum, for Brown, for Derek White, for Peyton Pritchard off the bench, and being able to match all of that. The one question, right? The one question is, what happens if a team is able to slow down SGA and you need some secondary creation? Is J-Dub ready for that? And who else on the team can do that if he's not, or they need a little extra? If they don't win the finals, I think ultimately that's probably the conversation we're having is, man, J-Dub wasn't quite able to drive offense in the non-SGA minutes, in the in the games where SGA maybe had an off night or whatever. He wasn't able to be that number 2. I'm not saying he can't be. I'm not here to doubt J-Dub.
We're
I'm just
saying
saying
how it would go wrong if it
if
goes
it
wrong.
if it goes wrong, barring health and everything else, that seems to be the most glaring potential weakness is that.
Yeah. So I would agree with that. I agree with everything you just said on Oklahoma City. To me, it's just all about the fact that they have the versatile defenders. Like, this is why Oklahoma City ahead of Cleveland for me, right? Cleveland just is going to have inherent issues in terms of like lineup constructions that they're going to present, right? Because you're going to play the two small guards all the time. And Oklahoma City just has a number of different bodies that they can throw at those two small guards and make their lives really, really, really hard. And on the opposite side, okay, who is going to slow down Shea from Cleveland, right? I would venture it's now going to be an attempt at like DeAndre Hunter, probably, right? That or maybe Isaac Okoro. Well, if you do that, then if it's Okoro, you're taking offense off the court. If it's Hunter, Hunter's okay against like shifty guards like that. I would say he's better against bigger wings, personally. Like I would trust him honestly on like Jalen Williams a lot more than I would trust him on Shea. And I think he could actually like, cause some issues on Jalen Williams. The thing with Hunter is that, saying Hunter is meh on defense, Hunter is a really good on ball defender. Like if he is asked to guard somebody just one-on-one, he is good at that. His stuff is when he has to make like rotations and has to make like decisions and process things quickly. He doesn't do it as quickly as you would like to see it all the time. But like one-on-one defense, he's pretty good at that. Like I'm not saying he's like an all defense guy, but like he's pretty good on that end. And like an upgrade on what Cleveland has, in my opinion. So given the offense, like Okoro is probably a better on-ball defender in a vacuum than what Hunter is, but the difference in offense between those two is pretty drastic. Okay. We'll talk about Cleveland in a second here.
Yep.
But I have Boston at number 2.
I do as well.
Okay. So we've just seen a Boston-Cleveland game, right? I thought the process that Boston utilized in that game was really, really awesome in terms of for the first 3 quarters and really in the fourth quarter too. They just missed a lot of shots early in the fourth quarter, but like it was just relentless. We are attacking Darius Garland. We are attacking like whatever advantage we can get all the time, every single time. And what was fun about this matchup was even though it was at the deadline, basically everyone played. Like for both of those teams, like you had all 4 of the guys for Cleveland, you had all 6 of the guys for the Celtics. They get to play all the time. Got to see different cross matches. We got to see different situations occur. It was in Cleveland, so we got to see what that looks like. It was an amazing basketball game, and Cleveland like scratched and fought and clawed their way back into this thing, which was really, really good. But man, I just think that the advantage is that Boston's playmakers are a little bit bigger and are really effective defensively. Darius Garland is an incredible basketball player, having an amazing season, who is well deserving of his all-star berth. But the defense does leave something questionable against that specific matchup with Boston. Against other matchups, not really. But against Boston, it can be an issue with their big playmakers.
Yeah, listen, Boston is the team, right, where whatever you want to call, if they're coasting a little bit here and there, if there's a lack of focus at times or whatever. But as you mentioned there, we've seen them in certain matchups where they've really come to play. For whatever reason, they really want to send a message whenever they play GMAC's New York Knicks, right? Like they show up and they really send a message there. Tatum is still having a really solid season, averaging 27. Jaylen Brown hasn't been great from the 3-point line, but a good year. Porzingis, 27 games. We've seen him back earlier than what we thought. Like all of the normal cast is still there. I do have one question for the Celtics. And it's really like Drew Holiday's offensive season has been weird. 44% from the field, 34% from 3. There's games where it's just not great. I know they ask him to do a lot of things, right? Like all of a sudden you'll look up and like Drew Holiday's down in the dunker and, because of the versatility he does offer. Are you worried at all? Like, is there a little bit of a concern that a team is all of a sudden like you're playing the Thunder in the finals and they're able to take Chet and put Chet on Drew and not really guard him, and he becomes do you think Drew becomes that sort of a liability in a I don't either, but I find myself what is it, intrusive thoughts? An intrusive thought I have is this the year where Drew's offense falls off enough where he becomes that sort of liability?
So like, here's the only thing that I will say. Like, yes, Drew is shooting 34% from three this year. It's down. Drew, in general, up until last season, if you look at his last 3 playoff runs before that, had been in like the 30% from three range, right?
Yep.
He was really good when he was young with Philly. Like, he knocked down threes at a high level then. Was obviously fantastic last year with Boston, and I thought had like a case as being the finals MVP, honestly, with the way that he took on those tough defensive matchups against Luka and Kyrie. But I think where I'm at is I would say I trust Drew. I think Drew will be fine on offense because he can shoot, but if he goes through like a cold stretch as a shooter, that's when things will get iffy, because he does go through some cold stretches here and there.
And okay, so let's say he does. You still have Derek White. You still have Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum. Peyton Pritchard has been awesome. Like, do you even have an answer for that situation, right? Like, Boston may have an answer or you go big and put Horford on the floor or whatever. Like, I think they may have an answer anyway. And again, this was like, an intrusive thought where I find myself wondering. And when you do this and you're talking about the top teams, I find myself looking more towards what could go wrong. And with them, obviously, like, if Porzingis isn't healthy, that's a huge part of this. But beyond that, it was, okay, where can this come around? And I don't think it's Tatum. I don't think it's Brown. I don't think it's Derek White. I love Drew Holiday. I love the way they use him, versatility, defensively, all of that. I think they're going to lock in more come playoffs. That was the thing I found or wondered was, what if the offense has regressed a little bit because he is 34, like he is older, and these things
like,
can happen.
And here's the case. I don't even know that it's like regressed, right? It's that he's had a long season. Like, he just played a long NBA season last year, directly into the Olympics, directly into this season. Like, is it possible he breaks down like in the Western or in the Eastern Conference Finals, in the finals? I hope not, but I don't know the answer to that for sure. Right? Like, that would be what I would say. I don't know the answer for sure on that. And oh, by the way, Al Horford is 38 now.
So I was gonna say that too. Like, I was just looking at his numbers, and 40% from the field, 35% from three at 41. That's another rotation player.
And Kristaps Porzingis has played 27 games this year and, got hurt in the playoffs last year. So now the good thing is that like Peyton Pritchard and, has stepped up in a big way. And Sam Hauser has been, his normal knockdown shooter self, who is at least solid on defense. Right. So there's room for them to like have some down moments in the playoffs. Right. But man, I think the margin for error is a little bit lower on this team just because of the depth. Now, their ceiling is probably higher than anybody's when they're rolling. I just don't think they're quite as consistent as Oklahoma City, which is why I have them at number 2.
Yeah. No, I thought about it because it was like, they are the defending champs. It's the same team. We've seen them be very good this year. I wanted to reward OKC with how good they've been throughout the season. And because I do believe OKC has the makings, and because OKC was there last year, didn't push through, and now is going back, like it's not like their first year getting there. So it was a little bit closer than like when you consider the records between these two teams. Right. But I still ended up with OKC, and then I was pretty confident having Boston here number 2.
I was too. I have Cleveland number 3. Do you have Cleveland number 3?
Yes, but the conversation will come after this then if we break tiers.
Okay. So I did not break a tier here. I have Cleveland in this
No,
top group.
No, I
with
mean
these.
if we break a tier before the next team that I would bring up.
Interesting. Okay. So let's talk about Cleveland next. Cleveland has been amazing this year. They're sitting here at 42-10. Like they're right in line with Oklahoma City so far. It does really just come down to like playoff matchup issues for me with them. Now, I want to give their front office credit. They went out and got DeAndre Hunter and got under the tax in the way that like we said they kind of had to. Shout out to ownership there being willing to take on a number of or a significant amount of money in the future with DeAndre Hunter's deal. It will lead to them having to make moves in the summer for sure. Like they're absolutely going to have to. But they still have Donovan Mitchell. They still have Darius Garland. Evan Mobley has been a significantly improved player this season, averaging 19-9, 3 assists, shooting 39% from 3 on 3 3-point attempts per game. He's still super efficient on the interior. Jarrett Allen is shooting 70% at the basket, right? Or 70% overall right now, averaging 14 points, 10 rebounds, has been a tremendous defensive player this season. They have a ton of depth. They have a ton of depth between Max Strus, between DeAndre Hunter. Like their 11th man is Craig Porter, right? And Craig Porter, you and I think could like probably sneak in a playoff series and be fine. Isaac Okoro and DeAndre Hunter should be a great defensive duo. Dean Wade has been really solid throughout the course of the season. And then you have Ty Jerome and Sam Merrill as well, both of whom are really effective offensive players too. I think that their depth does get them through, if only because, again, now that they do have the Hunter signing, I think that they also have the ability to go big and small. They can go supersized with Hunter, Mobley, Allen, or they could go Mobley off the court if he's in foul trouble or whatever, and go Hunter at the 4 and still have like 6'8" with a 7'2" wingspan there and maintain the rebounding because Allen's a really high level rebounder. Or you could go Mobley at the 5, Hunter at the 4, and just switch everything and try and play that way. So it's a really, really interesting team. And I think that the Hunter move does actually upgrade them in a real way.
Yeah, we talked about this, just what he offers and his ability to knock down shots, his size. We've already talked about his defense, so we don't need to go back into that a lot. I think the most impressive thing, and we've talked about it throughout the year, giving the Cavaliers their flowers, is just how they figured out how to make this thing work on the offensive end. I give Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell a lot of credit. And I probably didn't take into account Darius's injuries enough last season in terms of how that allowed him to be comfortable and coming back from those injuries, fighting through them, all of that. The way those two guys play off the ball is so impressive, because I mentioned last episode how hard it is to take a guy or girl who's played on the ball or off the ball and then try to flip that, right? Like, hey, go play on the ball your whole life. Now go play off the ball and relocate and cut. And it's not easy. And it's not always easy to make those shots. Both of those guys have jumpers that allows them to do so. They get on balance, they move. And then Mobley and Allen's passing, I think, is going to be vital come the playoffs. Those guys have to be able to pass the ball because they don't space it. Allen doesn't space the floor. Mobley's floor spacing will be fascinating in the playoffs, Sam, to see if teams guard him as a floor spacer. My guess is teams initially won't, and he'll have to prove it, and he very well may do so. Or they may close out late because it does take him a little while to get it off. But he can attack closeouts. He can pass. I love his aggressiveness offensively, but I think those two guys and their combination offensively in some ways sets the ceiling for them, because if you can continuously play those guys together offensively and it not be a concern, that makes them so good defensively and makes up for some of the things you have issues wise with Darius and to a much lesser extent, Donovan, who I think is probably neutral defender. He's just a little bit bigger than Darius, but Darius being able to hold up on the defensive end may be the biggest thing, right? Because teams are absolutely going to hunt him. Right or wrong, that's what teams are going to do. And he's going to have to be able to stay out of foul trouble, hold up, or if they have to start bringing doubles and doing other things, then everybody else has to be able to rotate, switch, scramble, that stuff.
Well, and really what he has to do is he has to be able to outperform his defensive issues on the offensive end, right? And what my concern is in that specific instance is Boston has Derek White and Drew Holiday that they can just throw at him and say, hey, we don't need you on offense. Like, we just need you to knock down shots if you're open. Use all of your energy to go and attack those dudes on defense. Oklahoma City has like 7 dudes they can throw at those guys. Like, you've got Caruso, you've got Dort, you've got Kaysen, you've got Jalen Williams. God, not Jalen Wilson. Jalen Williams. Like, you have so many different players that you would feel comfortable guarding Darius Garland in a playoff series. I just think that marginally, right? Because that's what this is. Like, you're talking on the margins. Like, the margin that those guys will be able to decrease Garland on offense is probably a little bit greater than what Garland will be able to do to them on offense.
Yeah.
So I love Darius Garland. He's been, I think you and I have talked about him throughout the entire season as being like this incredible player. But that is the question that the Cavs have to answer, is what do they do? Which I'm glad that you brought that up.
Yeah.
Okay. Who is your 4th team?
So here's where I struggle. The team, my 4th team is the Nuggets. But where I struggle with the tier is I don't think they belong in the same tier as the Celtics and the Thunder. So then it's like, but I don't think I love the idea of them being a tier below the Cavs, even though I think the Cavs I'm fine with. So like, I struggle. Like, it's almost like I need a half tier because it's Nikola freaking Jokic and he's awesome. And this team has snuck themselves into 3rd in the West, game and a half behind the Grizzlies. Over the last 15 games, they're 4th in the NBA in nets, behind the Thunder, is stupid, the Timberwolves, the Clippers, and then the Nuggets are right there. Jamal Murray has had a few good months in a row. Porter Jr. is playing well. Christian Brown has absolutely figured it out, whether starting, coming off the bench, whatever. Aaron Gordon's back. Strother, I think, has figured out his role. The issue is, what's it going to look like in the playoffs? Right? What does Russ look like in the playoffs? What does the depth look like in the playoffs? I get all of that, but there is a championship pedigree. They have the best player in the world. They're playing better right now. And again, well, like, they can lead the top of the next tier for me. Like, that's fine. I just struggled. I don't think they're in Boston and OKC's area group. I struggled completely putting them in a different tier than Cleveland, I guess. Like, does my
your explanation make sense?
Does my dilemma make sense with that?
Yeah. So I do have Cleveland in a slightly, it's hard. Like, I'd almost wish that like we could have like a half tier and then we get into like Seth Greenberg tiers, and like I don't really want to do that. Like tier 1, tier 1A, tier 1A2. Like, I remember when Greenberg used to do that on ESPN, and I'd just like fucking lose my mind. What a moron. Like, I think that I would have Denver at 4 right now.
Sure. Yeah.
Denver is a really good basketball team that has the best player in the world. By the way, shout out to Owen Phillips. I love his F5 newsletter.
Yeah, I saw
so
you
funny.
comment on this, so it showed up on my feed. This was interesting.
Yeah. Shout out to him. So file this under cool but useless. Nikola Jokic this season is currently in the middle of having the season where his 3-point attempts are longer than anybody else's 3-point attempts in NBA history. His 3-point attempt distance is 29 feet on average. He's taken 204 of them. And oh, by the way, Nikola Jokic shooting 46% from 3 this season. It's ridiculous. He is taking the longest threes in NBA history and is shooting 46%. That's like unfathomable how good he's been as a shooter this season. It makes no sense. He's unbelievable.
He's really, really good. Really good.
It's incredible. So,
I mean, he's averaging a triple-double right now. 29.5, 12-7, 10-3 on 58, 46, 82.
Yeah, like the MVP race is not dead yet. Like he's still very strongly in the MVP mix right now.
Especially now that they're winning. I mean, that was my other thing is I couldn't have made this argument, Sam, I don't think, even a couple weeks ago or whatever. Yeah. And I was just looking through it today and I had recognized that Jamal had been playing better and they had been winning games and like they've jumped Houston at this point. Again, they're a game and a half back of Memphis. I can't say they're OKC. I can't say they're Boston. Cleveland obviously has been a better regular season team. There's no question. But when I factor how good they've been recently, having the best player in the world, and multiple of these guys on this team have won a championship, that brings that distance closer based off what we've seen just regular season win-loss record-wise. And so that's why I struggled having there too much separation between those two teams.
Yeah, totally. I totally get that. Like, honestly, no, I want to see Oklahoma City in Boston more than any other potential finals matchup. But Cleveland Denver would be an amazing finals matchup.
Yeah.
Like that, I mean, I would just thinking through that, like I don't know what I would think would happen there.
That front line of Cleveland would be really interesting, right? Like you put Jarrett Allen on Jokic and then you have Mobley roaming off the ball. Who do you put on Jamal Murray in that series, right? Is that another DeAndre Hunter matchup or not? You can't. Denver's too big outside of that, right? Well, because if you have Hunter on Murray, that's putting Donovan or Darius on Michael Porter Jr. Probably can live that, maybe. So the matchups would be interesting. Maybe Donovan.
You could do it a lot of different ways. Yeah.
Donovan just takes and we don't even know who the Nuggets starting lineup is going to be by that time, right? Because we saw Russ stay in the starting lineup, Christian Brown go to the bench, and then now Russ, I think, has missed some games, and so Christian has been starting.
Yep. So I'm interested to know what they do. I'll say that. I'm very interested to see what they do. Okay. I agree with you that I have Denver at 4.
Okay.
Largely because of Jokic. Like Jokic is just the best player. If he's not the best player on planet Earth, it's Shea, or it's Giannis. Like to me, I would take Jokic as being the best player on Earth right now. He's been unbelievable this season. And this is one of the best offensive seasons I've ever seen a player have, probably at this point. He's shooting 46% on 29 on 3-pointers. They're an average of 29 feet away from the rim. He's shooting 46% from 3, having taken almost 1/10 of his 3-point attempts being like heaves from beyond half court.
Yeah. If
you remove the heaves, he's shooting like 50% from 3. It's bonkers how good Nikola Jokic has been this season. Okay. Number 5, I have the Knicks still.
Yep. I went back and forth with a couple teams.
Yeah. And this is where it gets interesting for me. I do have the Knicks in the same tier, I think, as Denver.
Okay.
And I think that there are a couple other teams you could throw in this mix and we could have a conversation about it. But the Knicks are currently sitting 34-18. They have the second best offense in the league. They average 120 points per 100 possessions. They're just dealing with some minor, OG Anunoby has this weird foot thing that he's dealing with. But they have Jalen Brunson. They have Karl Anthony Towns. Then they have these 3 monster wings in Mikal Bridges, Josh Hart, and OG Anunoby that they have to hope can get them home on defense, right? Maybe they can, maybe they can't. Maybe teams will just attack Jalen Brunson. Teams will attack, Karl Anthony Towns and ball screens. We'll see how it all goes, right? Obviously, you have Deuce McBride as well to be able to throw out there. and he'll be like an impact defender who, hopefully at least, and I would think that he will make shots. It's been a little bit more inconsistent there than what I would have hoped this season. But the Knicks, to me, are the team in the Eastern Conference I would take ahead of these other teams right now. And it took me a while to get there. I don't think that they're quite in the same tier as Boston and Cleveland. I think that, and obviously I think Knicks fans will look at it and be like, well, why wouldn't we be favored over Cleveland? Right? We've seen how that looks in the playoffs before. I think that the difference with this Cleveland team is that the spacing offensively is just way better under Kenny Atkinson, and the intentionality is way, way better than it was under JB Bickerstaff. I mean, you're dealing with that right now with the Pistons, right? So behind the curtain, right? Probably later this week, you guys will have a video on Asar Thompson. And I broke down the offense and broke down everything with Asar. I did like a Pacers game from, I guess like a week and a half ago now. But what I kept coming back to with them was that the number of times that Jalen Duren was in the exact spot where Asar Thompson should be cutting, backdoor or 45 cutting or whatever it was really staggering to me.
Yeah.
Honestly, they just have to get way more intentional about how they space. And that was true of Cleveland back when the Knicks beat them in the playoffs too. So I think the spacing is way better under Kenny. I think that they are just a little bit ahead of where the Knicks are right now. But I am at the point now where I think I would take the Knicks over the Bucks. I think that there are too many attack points on the Bucks defensively at this point, and I think that they should be able to, the Knicks with their offense should be able to pinpoint different issues against Milwaukee. We'll talk about Indiana here eventually. Indiana is a really interesting playoff team that I think is going to be really hard to deal with again for a whole bunch of teams, and they're probably going to rank higher than what people expect on my list. But I still think I'm going with the Knicks because I think that their offense is just a little bit more highly powered than what Indiana can bring.
Yeah, I had them definitely over any other team in the East. I'm interested to have the conversation of them versus whoever our next West team is. But I think my worry with the Knicks is just the depth, right? We've seen it flame out before in terms of guys started to get hurt and they didn't have the depth there. It's even more concerning this year in terms of what are you getting? Let's just even say Deuce. Let's count Deuce into it. That's 6. What else is there? I mean, I guess Knicks fans would tell you Precious. I'm not sure how that looks for a playoff run in multiple series. Maybe he does. Maybe I continue to undersell Precious Achiuwa, and maybe I'm going to learn from that. But that starting 5 is incredible. They're awesome. You have 2 all-NBA players in Brunson and Karl-Anthony Towns. Bridges has really figured it out. The shooting percentages look good. OG, obviously Josh Hart, triple-double watch every night, seemingly. I'm a little nervous defensively. What can they really lock in? Can those wings really hold it down in a way that makes up for everything that Brunson and Cat are not? And then can they just get the timely bench play that they need? Maybe Hook Porty figures it out and is able to give them 8 minutes a night or something. I don't know. But that is probably my biggest thing. And I realize in the playoff, the rotations shrink and all of that. I get it. I still worry about that they just don't have as many options as some other teams do with what they can do with their lineup.
Let's get to a quick little note from PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long on PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best place to get real money action. There are over 10 million members. Like I said a second ago, they invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. PrizePicks always puts its members first, so all withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. When my picks hit, I can get my money in as quick as 15 minutes. We are big fans of PrizePicks here. We absolutely love the app and what they're doing for the daily fantasy sports scene. Download the app today and use code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today and use that code Game Theory to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, run your game.